I would like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for March 5th, 2025. Members, if you would, we'll ask now to open the board. So for attendance, if you would, please log in and confirm your attendance. Oh, that's fine. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 18 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And members, let me make a correction. Today is March the 4th and not the 5th. So just want to make sure we get that on the record. All right, members, any personal orders or announcements? Yes, sir. Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to wish our very own Jesse Chisholm a happy birthday. And I see his beautiful bride is in the audience watching him. You don't have any bills up today or anything, do you? You're just coming to watch the show? Wait. Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday. All right. Congratulations. Representative Chisholm, your name was called. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I did bring a shadow today that's been following me around today to kind of see how we do things here at the Capitol. My very own Hershey Kiss is here, ladies and gentlemen. My wife, April.
All right. Welcome to the committee. All right. Any other personal orders or announcements? All right, seeing none. Today, our calendar includes a total of 5 bills followed by our budget hearings, and we are going to take up our bills first. So without further ado, let's go to item number 1 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 103 by Chairlady Littleton. You have a motion and a second, and you are recognized, Chairlady, for a description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is administration DCS bill. This legislation expands the extension of foster care program to include more young adults in the program, and it changes certain requirements for the young adults to receive extension of foster care services. Currently, young adults under the age of 21 are eligible to receive extension of foster care services. This legislation changes the age to under the age of 23 and allows children who found permanency between the ages of 16 to 18 years of age to be eligible for the program. It also removes the fees related to the issuance of a driver's license permit or photo identification for youth in the extension of foster care program or juvenile justice programs. And finally, the bill establishes the foster care youth outreach liaison program and makes it permanent.
All right, Chair Lady, thank you for this description. Members, you have heard from the sponsor. Any discussion? Again, we're on House Bill 103. Hearing none, seeing none, question has been called. Any objection? Called the question. Hearing none, seeing none. We're now voting on House Bill 103, moving on to calendar and rules. Madam Clerk, please open the board. Members, please select aye if you are in favor or no if you are opposed. Have all votes been taken? Would anyone like to change their vote? Hearing none and seeing none. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 21 ayes, 0 noes.
And House Bill 103 moves on to calendar and rules. This motion passes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and committee.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 2 on our calendar. Item number 2 on our calendar is going to be HJR 17 by Representative McCalman. You have a motion and a second. And sir, you're recognized for a description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This is House Joint Resolution 17, and it simply urges the federal government to pass the Fair Tax Act, essentially eliminating income tax, cutting our tax code into a much, much smaller iteration than it is currently at 70,000 pages. It would remove the need for April filing. It would put it essentially where you are paying your taxes at a point of purchase on new goods and services, not used goods and services. And you would see your tax at the point of purchase, putting the taxpayer back in charge of how they spend their money and really how they shop. So with that, I stand ready for questions or renew my motion.
All right, Representative McCalman, thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion? Again, we're on HJR 17. Representative Baum, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. I know this is just a resolution urging, and there's a lot of advantages to this approach. I guess I was just going to comment that it would also be a pretty big shift in the tax burden because the income tax is a progressive tax where the more money you earn, the higher percent you pay, and you pay that higher percent on a larger amount of income as you earn more money. But with a sales tax, everybody pays the same rate, which ends up being a larger percent of your income if you're lower income and a smaller percent of your income if you're higher income. Anyway, the tax burden would kind of shift from some groups to others. I know that we're not setting federal policy, but I thought I'd just point that out.
Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman Baum, yes, in some ways it is a shift in tax burden, but it also eliminates loopholes and write-offs, and it is essentially eliminates the need for the IRS as a whole. So other states have passed this. The federal government actually had introduced this about 12 years ago in Congress. It just never went anywhere. I believe personally that the fairest type of tax is a consumption tax, a tax on usage and not on labor. This is why I'm bringing this resolution, sir.
Chairman Baum.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to point out in 1913, there's a Supreme Court case over the institution of income tax. It was only supposed to be the top 3% wage earners, and it was only supposed to be temporary. And the court ruled at that time that it was unconstitutional to tax labor. So I think the spirit of the HR is in the right place.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Sponsor, would you like to respond? All right, thank you. Further discussion. Again, we're on HJR 17. Hearing none and seeing none, we're now going to vote on HJR 17, moving on to calendar and rules. Madam Clerk, please open the board for vote. Members, please cast your vote. A yes is to send HJR 17 on to calendar and rules, and a no is to oppose. Have all votes been recorded? Would anyone like to change their vote? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 19 ayes, 3 nays, 1 present not voting.
All right, thank you. And the ayes have it. HJR 17 moves to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3. Item number 3 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 0115 by Leader Lamberth. You have a motion to second. Sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This fixes a glitch in the criminal code that we created with the franchise and excise repeal last year. I stand ready for questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Members, you've heard the description. Again, we're on House Bill 115. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 115, moving on to calendar and rules. Madam Clerk, please open the board for a vote. Members, a yes is for 115, House Bill 115 to move on to calendar and rules. A no is to oppose. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, thank you. The ayes have it. House Bill 115 moves on to calendar and rules. All right, that brings us, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 4 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 1133 by Chairman Boyd. You have a motion to second, sir. You're recognized for a description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, this bill simply adds nuclear energy production facilities to the definition of a certified green energy production facility in the tax code. Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Boyd. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1133. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1133, moving on to calendar and rules. Madam Clerk, please open the board. We're now voting on House Bill 1133, moving on to calendar and rules. A yes vote if you are for and a no if you oppose. Have all votes been cast? Would anyone like to change their vote? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 1 present not voting.
All right, thank you. And the ayes have it. House Bill 1133 moves on to calendar and rules. That brings us to item number 5. Item number 5 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 120 by Chairman Hulsey. You do have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized for a description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The Department of Safety has a unit called the Division of Protective Services. It's to guard or escort individuals. It, I guess, is the only legal escort service offered in the state of Tennessee. This bill says that if this unit is guarding or escorting someone and somebody intentionally stands in their way and will not leave or blocks their ingress or egress, this makes it a class A misdemeanor to do that. Or if they're ordered to leave or vacate a particular area because that's where this unit has to go, and they refuse to do that, it makes it a Class A misdemeanor.
All right, members, everyone has heard the description of House Bill 120. Please don't make me ask him to do it again. Any discussion on the bill? Hearing none and seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 120, moving on to calendar and rules. Madam Clerk, please open the board. A yes vote is to send House Bill 120 on to calendar and rules. A no vote is to oppose. Have all votes been cast? Would anyone like to change their vote? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 24 ayes, 1 no.
All right, the ayes do have it. House Bill 120 moves to calendar and rules. All right, members, that concludes our bills for today. We will now move on to the budget hearings, and we're going to begin with the Department of Disability and Aging. Members, let me just remind you that you can refer to your dashboard for all presentation documents. Also, to our presenters, let me say that we will be controlling the sound. So once you're ready to speak, if you'll just make sure that you're recognized, and then we'll control your microphone, and please be sure to introduce yourself before you do speak. So without further ado, without objection, we are out of session. We are now out of session, and we do have before us the Department of Disability and Aging. Mr. Brad Turner, Commissioner, we'd like to welcome you and your staff, and you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Certainly excited to be here. I want to do some brief introductions. To my left is my Deputy Commissioner for Program Operations, Jordan Allen. To my right is my Deputy Commissioner for Fiscal and Administrative Services, Andy Kidd. And to his far right is our Budget Director, Clayton Wells. So very excited to be here, excited about the work that the department's doing. Certainly appreciate your support. I hope this committee has taken some pride in what we've been able to accomplish for Tennesseans with intellectual developmental disabilities and those who are aging, because it is a partnership. And so we are grateful for your support and the things that you've allowed us to do as a department. So, Mr. Chairman, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Deputy Commissioner Kidd, and he's going to begin our presentation.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner.
All right, there we are. Good afternoon. Andy Kidd, Deputy Commissioner of Fiscal and Administrative Services for the department. We're going to start with line item number 1, which is our DCS DDA partnership. And this is to expand our support services and care coordination for children in DCS custody with an IDD. We'll be utilizing our independent support coordinators, which are our private providers, to be a resource for foster families and kids. The next line item is for the Tennessee Early Intervention System. This is TEIS, our rates, our therapy rates specifically, and an increase of 2%. The next line item is for our senior nutrition program. This will address address part of the wait list and then increase the rates for congregate and home delivered meals for our aging population. This is a partnership with our area agencies on aging and disability who manage this program. So that includes addressing approximately 1,800 folks on the wait list, as well as the rates for both the congregate and the home delivered meals. I'm going to pause there and let Commissioner give an update about our farmers program.
So one of the things that we had done as a department, we've gotten asked about how are we better streamlining services and supports. One of the things that we have done is worked with Commissioner Hatcher, the Department of Agriculture. I think everybody on this committee, and I think most people in the state understand the importance of farming and agriculture to Tennessee's overall economic well-being, but also the health and security, food security challenges that we run into for Tennesseans. We have engaged with them a partnership to work very closely with Tennessee farmers to make sure that they have the opportunity to work with our senior centers and our area agencies on aging and disability to start providing fresh fruits and vegetables, food to the table for seniors in Tennessee who might have to go to congregate settings or might require Meals on Wheels to have fresh food delivered to their homes. That has now taken off. If you're active on social media, our department is very active on social media promoting videos and sharing about the partnerships. I would encourage you to watch the video that we just did with Bledsoe County farmers and the impact that it has had on that area. If you do not have access, we can certainly send that to you, but I want the committee to know that we're working very closely with the Department of Agriculture to make sure that we empower Tennessee farmers to continue to be able to produce in their areas to serve people. And I'm very excited about the program and the direction it's going to go to make sure that we serve Tennesseans of all abilities and those who are aging. So thank you for letting me add to that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Next line item is for our options wait list. This is recurring funding to address part of the wait list. This will address about half of the wait list, which is around 4,500. The next 3 line items are all 2% rate increases for our extremely important direct support professionals and our independent support coordinators that I mentioned earlier. I'm not going to go into detail on those because they're all just 2% increases on those rates. And with that, I believe I'll take any, I'm sorry, I need to go over reductions. Reductions are our waiver utilization and our attrition dollars. And those reside in TennCare's budget. With that, we'll take any questions.
All right. Thank you very much. And we do have some folks on the list. And we are going to begin with Deputy Speaker Zachary. He is out. So let's go to Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Chairman and members, and Commissioner, your team. Thank you very much. To your team, we go back way back. So I appreciate the work that we've done collaboratively, and as we've added new opportunities to our department, I'm excited to work with you. And I'll echo the thanks as we're coming in the room. Thanks for the work that you're doing in Greene County with the new facility there. It is going to be impressive and serve more folks in the way that needs to be served. So thank you very much. The inclusion of $1.6 million to provide support services for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities in DCS custody. How many folks are we serving? How many children are we serving in that census? And how much funding, how many children will this serve? Will this funding serve actually?
They'll turn it on.
It may be just a kind of an idea of the support services that are included in this, if you could, gentlemen.
First of all, thank you very much for the question. The program essentially provides an IDD expert to foster families with children with intellectual and developmental disability. With that IDD expert and a small amount of funding, we've seen a fairly massive increase in the rate of stability for those kids. Just for context, previous to engagement, it was about 15 or 20% of those kids made it a year. Now it's about 85%. A total of almost 1,000 kids have been served so far. This appropriation would allow us to serve roughly 1,600.
Chairman, thank you very much. And thank you for that work. That's critically important, and look forward to serving if we need some more dollars. Let's
sir.
talk about that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's move on to Leader Cochran. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So wanted to touch on $22 million recurring to establish 5 new positions and provide wraparound supports, case management, and crisis intervention services for foster and adoptive families caring for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So can you tell us how much of that $22 million was spent in 23-24 and how many children were served by that?
Let's see, I've got the total amount of kids that are currently enrolled is 795. And then we've got 12 kids that we are currently serving directly in our community homes, which is all of that funding combined. We have 1,000 slots, and I might have to get back to you on how much we've spent this fiscal year. Can you look at that? This fiscal year? 25. Don't have
23, 20. Yeah, 23,
25?
20. Yeah.
Okay, we'd have to get that back to you. I apologize. I don't think I have that in front of me of how much has been spent. It's going to be about 70% because we're about 70% of the enrollments. So I'd guess about 70%, but we'll get you that exact number.
Sure. Are there any barriers that you found, getting this funding to families? Have there been any hurdles you've had to overcome?
We've been working with our HRA vendor, and there are some challenges especially when it comes to training families and making sure that there's appropriate training. Our communications team has done a wonderful job getting over that roadblock. And so we feel really comfortable at this point where we are when it comes to training the families and them understanding what that funding is for. And so short answer is I think it's been really, really beneficial for foster families, and we're seeing more and more come forward saying, hey, sign me up. We want this.
Okay, great. So, yes, sir. Sorry.
One of the things the families have reported to us, and this was true in the Katie Beckett program also, but that HRA card is extremely flexible. It's available immediately, typically not to bring the committee down into the weeds, but there's a process in other programs where you have to write an approval, a justification, submit a service plan, wait for that approval. With enrollment into this program for those Tier 2 foster families, essentially they're approved for expenditures right there on the spot, which is of paramount importance when things are rapidly changing. You've got a child with intellectual or developmental disabilities and maybe a family that's not accustomed to providing those services, a foster family providing the supports that they need. And so we've heard over and over from that group that the flexibility and immediacy of the ability to spend the money that's allocated has been a godsend for them.
Great. And Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
just one last follow-up. That's all
Yes,
right.
sir.
So families are currently capped at $20,000 per child per calendar year. Do you think that $20,000 annual cap is sufficient for families so far? Has that been a proper amount?
The cap has definitely been high enough. Yes, sir. Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. Next on the list, let's go to Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for your hard work. Appreciate what you're doing. I know in 23-24, we added, I think it was 30 some odd positions. It was about 36 positions, $17.3 million for those with acute medical needs that were in our, those vacancies that were in our community homes. Can you tell me a little bit about like how many people were able to serve there because of those monies that were there? And does that represent, did that represent 100% of the need?
Yeah, let me add to that, Chairman Williams, before Jordan answers that. That has been incredibly critical for us, and we are working to make sure that we could accelerate and spin that up as quick as we could. So it has certainly had a very positive impact. Jordan will be able to give you a little bit deeper dive into what that looks like, but I want the committee to know that those positions, especially when you talk about the acute need, were incredibly significant for people that were in really challenging positions, that we were able to spin that up to make sure that we could meet those needs. So I want you to know that we have taken that very seriously and have worked to accelerate that, but he can give you a little bit deeper dive into that. But that was incredibly beneficial for the department, but most importantly for people that were in those crisis situations to better be served sooner rather than later. So I don't know what you want to add to that, but we can certainly add to that context.
Just from a numbers standpoint, 21 total people. And as Andy indicated, 12 currently are receiving services.
Okay, in the DDA fact book, it said that you had 144 total beds for community homes. Now, it looks like 16 of those beds are now designated as Tennessee Strong Family beds. Is the goal to move more that way, or because I'm a little bit confused on what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, so there's actually, there's still needs in multiple areas. And so those particular beds that you referenced were moved specifically for this population. One of the things when we opened our community homes, they had beds that were established. We're also looking to see what other areas of service might need to be delivered, specifically respite. So one of the things that we have done, Chairman Williams, we have had conversations with school districts and a lot of parents around the need for behavioral respite for children that are still school age, not necessarily adults. A place to send a 16-year-old who might be having co-occurring diagnosis with behavioral needs. So what you're seeing there, those 12 beds were pulled from that, but there are other conversations we're having to make sure that the beds that we do have can also be utilized for other positions to better serve needs. So Jordan can add to that, but we do have a plan in place to make sure that we've got enough bed capacity to meet the needs for different areas so we can utilize the resources that we already have in place.
Candidly, it's a luxury that we haven't had, and it's a product. Those 140 beds were originally built and made available for adults with IDD as they were transitioning out of institutional placements. Typically, those folks had really acute medical support needs. Thankfully, the private provider community since that time is in fact, Leader Hawk was referencing earlier, we've seen the private provider community develop capacity to support those folks or folks with similar support needs in a community setting, which is our preference. As the need for the state to step in and provide that service has continued to decrease, Commissioner Turner sat down with us and said, we need to utilize these staff who have done so well for over a decade in supporting really challenging needs and these homes that we have to meet other unmet needs. The byproduct of that was the support to the kids that we were just talking about. And then we're also looking for any gaps in service that we can utilize the expertise of those staff, because they really are, obviously I'm partial because they work for us, but these are some of the very best in the business at caring for folks that have really acute needs, and we have the space to do it. And so we spend a lot of time trying to gather stakeholder feedback from our community, what's needed, how can we best utilize these resources going forward. And we've done that for the last year plus, meeting needs of children with high acuity, medical acuity.
If I can add one thing to that too, that I think is good for the committee to know, that it's not always a one-to-one. You can't sometimes just take one bed and move it to something else. There's a lot of funding mixes that this committee knows about, gets very tricky. And so just because you see sometimes where there's these beds available, which means you can just pivot to do this, it's not that simple, even though I wish it was. So we have also had to navigate some of that to make sure that we can meet the needs of areas that we know are not receiving the service that they deserve.
So if we're moving them from, one group of beds to another group of beds, are we able to do that because there's no wait list for community homes? And do we see the possibility of needing those beds back at community homes? I guess my concern would be, we have a really well-trained workforce. But if we move those individuals over to the other, then we've created a problem for ourselves and the other. So is there not a waiting list currently, or you don't foresee one in the future?
We have made sure to build in capacity that we don't bite off more than we can chew. And so we're doing this very targeted and very specifically to make sure that we don't have to come back next year to say, hey, we didn't realize that we undershot or overshot. So we have built in capacity. Jordan really did a good job of talking about this was a step down from the institutions. And so now as people pass away and those beds become available, we're making sure that we're still building in enough capacity to serve those that are currently in those beds, but also making sure that we don't decrease that so much where we panic because now we don't have any place to put people. We're making sure that as we add on these programs, we have the capacity to do so without hurting the programs that were pre-existing.
Okay, so follow up on that is last May, you guys sent letters to those, that had adults in these facilities. You asked them, hey, if there's an opportunity where you can take adults home to kind of create space for that. where did most of those folks, were they transitioned mainly to home-based care, or was it somewhere else? What happened to those folks?
It was their decision. And so that was one of the things that we did, was just make sure that they were aware of the programmatic support that was available to them. One of the things that we had not done was be able to follow up with people to talk to them about enabling technology is available. There's a provider in your community if you want to do this privately. So we did not necessarily follow up as far as if they made a decision. It was really us sharing information with them. And if they wanted to pursue a change, that's when we would then engage them to help them make a decision if they wanted to go to private or if they wanted to stay in one of the community homes. We allowed them to do whatever they decided to do.
Do you know how many of those people that you moved to those?
Yeah, it was under five, three. Yeah, I was going to say it's
Oh,
under
okay.
five was three.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
very few ended up moving.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
All right. Thank you. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Good to see you today.
You too.
So last year we passed Jillian's Law, and you and I've had a lot of opportunities to discuss the implementation of that law. And I recently had the opportunity to go over and tour the Harold Jordan Center. Was very impressed with the staff there and the facility that we have. Thank you for setting that up. As of right now, how many individuals have been sent to the Harold Jordan Center due to either Jillian's Law or just recently through some of the changes we've made in the law?
So we have currently, there are five that are there as a result of Jillian's Law, working on opening up that 6-bed, which I think we shared with you there, Leader Lambert. And we've had, I think, under 10, under 15 that have been referred since last July 1.
How many are waiting for beds right now?
Do we have, I think there's 2 that were in the process of being referred. And that was, truthfully, Leader, that was probably last week or 2 weeks ago that I got that information.
And what would the cost be? I mean, I think when we toured through, I think you had between the 2 wings, I think it was 12 beds. And what would the cost be if we were to want to fund actually staffing those 12 beds?
So staffing it would be a little bit under $2.5 million to fully staff and operate 12 beds inside the Harold Jordan Center.
And do you have the equity right now within your total budget, regardless of where it is kind of currently ensconced, to be able to staff that?
That's probably an Andy question, and I'll defer to him on that fiscal question.
Challenging from a recurring basis. So you would see like this fiscal year reversion, we would have that amount. The challenge would be on a recurring basis. We could be robbing Peter to pay Paul in different, buckets of money. So TEIS, for example, we wouldn't want to move money out of there for a recurring basis, because then we would be here next year saying, I need more money for TEIS, right? So being careful and very strategic on how we do that. Short answer is we've been working with FNA and we'll continue to do so to see how best to fund that from a fiscal standpoint and what they can do and what they can do to help us move that money around from the right bucket. And then obviously another way to fund it is the General Assembly appropriate that additional funding to move from the 6 beds to the 12 beds.
And I'm looking at the cost increase, and we followed along with the governor's budget hearings when he was doing those. But I noticed that there wasn't any additional funds that were requested for the Harold Jordan Center. Why was that?
Jillian's Law passed and became effective July 1. We have to turn in our budgets by September. So we really only had 2 months to being able to see if there was any in effect. We hadn't seen any yet by that point. And so, we really try to make sure before we make budget requests, we have some data to show the governor's office and the General Assembly that, hey, yes, we do need more funding for a certain area. We had seen over the past several years a decline in referrals. So we didn't know what the effect of Jillian's Law might be. And we're seeing now that there are more beds that we probably need, but we're past the point in which I could do that official request in the budget cycle. So,
okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Commissioner. Thank you again. And if for those members that may wish to go and visit the Harold Jordan Center, I do recommend it. I mean, it's a very special, kind of unique way to be able to help folks that come into the criminal justice system that are deeply in need. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leader. Next on the list, Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. In the 24-25 budget, we provided $1.5 million to do the homes in the SMART programs. You said that they were going to open a home in Middle Tennessee and one in West Tennessee, which would open up 4 more beds. Can you provide an update on where we're at with those homes?
Sure. Go ahead, George. Yeah, it's the Strong Homes. I think you said start, start homes, not the strong homes.
So not the 10 START programs?
Sure, you said the START
The START
programs, yeah.
program.
So those are beds that are identified to support folks with co-occurring diagnosis and usually behavioral health treatment needs. Both homes are currently in development. We have not admitted the first person supported into those homes, but they are under development.
One of the things that we've done, Representative Crawford, is actually tried to add capacity to our START teams so they can work through the crisis as we're building out these homes. I will share with the committee that there was funding that was provided for us to create Tennessee START teams. The moment that we went live, we almost had a waiting list because of the need and the demand. So we immediately started addressing that problem. The homes are the second part of that wave to make sure that we better support people that find themselves in crisis.
Chairman.
So can you give me an idea of how much of the funding of the 1.5 that you've already spent?
Yeah, go ahead.
None of that funding has been spent. We're contracting that out with private providers, and that's taken a while to get the RFP or request for proposal process done and get a contract signed. So we're at the later end of a competitive procurement to being able to sign that contract with the private providers. And at that point, we'll be expending those funds.
In my understanding, this program was put together to be more of a short-term type things, 30 days to stabilize. Are we fulfilling that need? Is that being done? And where does those kids go, or where do they go once they are out after the 30 days?
That's exactly what we're working through. So depending on what the incident is or the situation depends on the responses with the private providers and the networks that we have built out to support these individuals. What would happen is they would be using those homes for respite for 30 days and then be moving back to their private provider location or at home, wherever their circumstances were that led them there. They would then be moving back into that place once they have received the proper stabilization and the proper support. They would leave that respite home or Tennessee Strong Home rather, and then be able to move back to the location that they were previously at.
Just out of curiosity, how has the program performed, and what's the average stay like? Somebody would be there and.
Yeah, well, we've built it intentionally to be 30 days or less. And so one of the challenges that we run into that we're working on is a lot of folks aren't sure about how long they might be there. Their supportive staff aren't sure about how long they might be there. So we have intentionally done 30-day stays. Number one, our clinical team believes that's the right amount of time for individuals to receive services to better stabilize and get themselves back to center. But the second part of that is we want to make sure that we don't turn that into long-term support there or institutionalization. That becomes very problematic and something that our department doesn't believe that we need to be doing. So we have intentionally created it to be a 30-day window to make sure the person gets supports and then they can move back to their everyday living.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. How's your dad doing?
He's doing better, Representative Spar. I appreciate you. He's coming home this week.
Good.
Appreciate
good.
you
I know you've been
asking.
through some
Thank you.
challenges. Well, one reason you're passionate is your daughter. Can you elaborate? I mean, many people in the audience may not know your personal situation.
Yeah, so Representative Sparks and I go way back, probably longer than anybody on this committee, including Representative Baum. So I'm the father of a daughter with intellectual developmental disability. So as Representative Sparks alluded to, this is something I get to pursue that's a passion and not a paycheck. This is something I've been advocating for since she was born. She's 18 years old. So we're in the process of living life as parents the same way that we have the privilege to do as a commissioner, supporting Tennesseans and parents and individuals that have disabilities. And so I, as most of the folks on the committee that know me and some that don't, this is the place that God has placed me to try to make a difference for people that might not have the opportunity. And it's something that I try to do the best of my ability every single day. So I appreciate you, Representative Sparks, letting me talk a little bit about my story. And that's the whole reason we fight.
Yes, yes. On the direct service providers, they were in the office. I'm sure they visited everyone. I wish I remember this guy's name with RHA Stones River. Guy been there 30 years. I said, man, why do you do this? He said, he just cares about about what he does and
Yeah.
making a difference in those lives. How much is that raise?
Yeah.
It's just
Andy will have that, but while he's
30
looking
something
that up,
cents.
when we all need good news given the climate that we're in the
Mhm.
world today, and the service providers are just that they are angels that are partners with us and how they support people, specifically the DSPs and the direct support professionals. So I want to publicly, to your point, Representative Sparks, while Andy is looking that up, thank our provider network, because we cannot do it without them providing quality care to people who are intellectually and developmentally disabled. And the DSPs and the direct support professionals that are on the front lines of that are the heroes that all of us should be cheering every day. And this committee has contributed to that by working with us on the increases for DSP wages. So as Andy's about to report on that, you will never hear me not fight for them, because they matter. And I cannot do this job without the folks that work in that space and the impact that they have had. So I will get off my soapbox there and let Andy give you the answer you asked about.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the wage increase is going from $15.37 to $15.68.
Yeah.
On average.
Well, last question, Chairman, if could. The difficulties you face with your own family, your position, you oversee how many employees?
About 1,850 right now,
Okay.
almost 2,000.
Then your dad, been in and
Mhm.
out of the hospital, some
Mhm.
serious issues. We talk about the issue of mental health, work-life balance. What advice would you give others with all you've got on you with you're dealing with? What advice would you give? Because you hear so much about mental health and issues on the rise.
Yeah, so it's kind of a twofold answer there. Number one, I always tell people, we just had this conversation at lunch. I was walking with one of my leadership team members, and we were talking about that you've got to have the ability to decompress and actually turn off the phone and turn off your computer. So one of the things that we try to encourage people, there needs to be the better work-life balance. Like, your faith and family come first. Work is a distant third. I better not find out you missed your child's game because there was something you were doing at work. Like that, I don't worry about that. We will get to that in the morning. And so it's really about disconnecting and making sure that our department understands faith is number one, family is number two, work is a distant third. So what are we doing in leadership to make sure that people are actually being able to operate under that environment and that umbrella? So I have tried to promote that since I've been in this position. The second part of that is we take mental health very seriously to understand that we want people being very vulnerable and open about the challenges that they're dealing with work, with stress, with life. Like, life is really hard. It's not easy. And we want people to be able to understand that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities can have mental health issues too. If I share this analogy, and I don't want to derail this, Chairman Hicks, but I think it's important. We have for so long had people that have thought that an individual does this because they have an intellectual disability, when they actually might be doing that because they're in a behavioral mental health crisis. If we walked outside right now and there was someone that was yelling at a stop sign and waving their shirt, you would not say, well, it's clear that person has a Down syndrome diagnosis. That person is in crisis, but they might have a Down syndrome diagnosis. So we have also worked very closely with our providers, and conversations I've had with Commissioner Marie Williams to better understand the impact of mental health for Tennesseans with intellectual developmental disabilities and those in the aging space. COVID was horrific for people in isolation. And our two populations were probably the two that were impacted the most. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Representative Sparks, because we have got to do a better job in our department of making sure that we attack the mental health needs of people that we have the privilege to serve and support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Members, anyone else have any questions for our guests? Representative Hale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. Question on the Katie Beckett. How many are we serving? I think it's capped at 4,000. Is that correct? How
Yeah.
many are we serving?
We're probably north of the interest in that, but we're right at that. Jordan can give, it's what's that, 4,400 are currently enrolled in receiving services or have actually called asking about that. It has been a phenomenally successful program. And again, it's built around the idea of flexibility for families. One of the things we didn't want to do is be so rigid and bureaucratic that they can only do this, this, and this. We do have to follow IRS guidelines and what they can purchase, but the flexibility that has been generated in the Part B, and we're working very closely with TennCare on the Part A, has allowed families to prevent their children from having to move into these areas that might be temporary institutionalization in certain homes because they're able to receive services in their community because of those dollars that have been allocated.
Okay. There was an issue in one of the counties that I serve that for a period of time, I guess kind of like a disenrollment or they lost the coverage, whatever, and they were having to pay out of pocket for people. They have a son that, so can you kind of tell me, I mean, was that something in the system? What was that issue?
Yeah, I truthfully, I would have to learn a little bit more of that. Maybe offline, you and I can chat, because one of the things that happens is they do have to make a purchase first, and then they do get reimbursed from that. So there could have been a delay in the reimbursement process. It would not have been something where the system would have been shut down. It could have just been that it took, they're used to it taking 10 days to receive their reimbursement, and this might have taken 21 days. It's easy for me to sit up here and say that 11 days isn't that long, but when you're living paycheck to paycheck, taking care of a child with disabilities, 11 days is an eternity. So that's certainly something I take ownership of, that I can get you an answer on that if I'm off on what happened. Happy to talk about it, because we need to make sure that these programs are working as efficiently as possible for these families that are already tired, and they don't need to have our department creating more of a headache.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And one more thing. Now, are y'all, I think if I'm not mistaken, the grants like for the senior centers, that's handled through you now.
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of tell the success of how that's been and what that's meant? I've been at some of the check presentations and some of those things, and to see what that has meant. But could you hit on that just a little bit for our senior citizens?
Yes, sir. You nailed it. I mean, any sort of area that we can invest in that matters to people who feel like nobody sees me carries an incredible weight of gratitude. And that's exactly what's happening. So one of the things that we have started to do intentionally, in fact, we're doing it tomorrow. I'll be in Knoxville. We're also going to these senior centers and these areas of area agencies on aging and disabilities in Tennessee, folks who are involved in the senior space, to have better conversations, because one of the things we don't want to do is just throw money to them if they don't tell us what they actually need. But those specific grants have been able to allow folks to have fresh fruit and produce. One of the other areas that we're working on under Jordan's leadership is how do we better incorporate technology into senior centers. This committee knows this, and I think the state is aware of it, that a lot of businesses are moving here. There's a business climate that we have created that is very attractive for businesses looking for low taxes and high talent. What we forget sometimes, I think, is that there are Tennessee seniors who have an incredible amount of talent, and nobody has called them in retirement to say, do you want to still contribute? So we are also working very closely in our department and making sure that we incorporate job coaching, opportunities for employment, having conversations with Commissioner Thomas at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development about how do we tap into the talent? Because just because you age doesn't mean you lose dignity or value or your knowledge or your experience. We need that, and we need it now more than ever. So I'm very excited about not only what we're doing with those grants, but the direction that we're going to take aging in the future, because there's a lot of people that have a lot to contribute that we need to knock on their door to say, are you ready to go back to work? Because we need you. And so I'm excited about where we're headed with that.
Thank you so much. And if
Yes,
you'll
sir.
just get with me on that
Yes, sir.
but appreciate your heart and your passion.
Thank you. Appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Hale. Any other member would like to be recognized? All right. If not, thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And your staff for being here. Certainly
you.
appreciate it. And we will move into the Department of Children's Services. If you all will make your way to the front. Welcome, Commissioner. You and your staff, and we will let you and your staff know that we will be working the microphone. So the only thing I would ask before you speak, if you would just make sure we just get my assistant's attention so we can make sure your microphone is turned on. You'll notice the mic is on when it actually turns red. So if you would, you can begin by introducing yourself and your staff who you have with you there, and we appreciate your time. You may begin.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks and honorable members of the committee. I am Margie Quinn, Commissioner of the Department of Children's Services, and we appreciate the opportunity to discuss our proposed 2025-2026 budget improvements. As the child serving agency in a position of public trust, it is vitally important that the Department of Children's Services gets it right every time. Over the last 24 months, DCS pivoted from an agency responding to constant crisis to an agency focused on strategic initiatives. For example, DCS all case manager turnover rate for the first 7 months of this fiscal year is 11.9%. Last year finished at 16.9% for the 12 months. For reference, this is down from 20.7% in 2023. In 2022, it was 28.8%, and in 2021, it was 23%. Case manager openings are down from 692 when I was sworn in to 258 today. We converted 50 long-time open positions to case manager positions in February. Our next case manager class will start on April 28th with 75 new case manager ones. 72 new clinical assessment beds have been opened for the care of youth in the state, reducing the number of children in transitional settings. A funded DCS real estate plan creates the first ever DCS facility statewide, which supports the construction of leading practice care centers. The strong support of Governor Lee and the Tennessee General Assembly fueled our transformation from a model built 30 years ago to a DCS position to positively impact the life of a child decades into the future. DCS has come a long way over the past 2 years. Continuous quality improvement is our goal, and we will achieve our goal to deliver critical and timely service across the state by working as one DCS team with your critical support. While we may not have time to speak into every budget item on the line in detail, I want to briefly mention several budget initiatives, one that is tied to a DCS bill, and several that do appear year over year. On line 2, administration legislation, extension of foster care modernization, raises the legal age or the age from 21 to 23 for youth aging out of foster care system. On lines 8, 9, and 14, there is a foster care cost of living rate increase, the adoption assistance and subsidized permanent guardianship rate increase, and the adoption assistance growth increase. These are included in the budget initiatives each year and are part of the Brian A. settlement agreement. Finally, lines 20, 21, and 22 were part of DCS's request to the administration for a cost increase for the child advocacy centers in Tennessee. These 3 lines represent a salary increase for forensic interviewers, which hasn't occurred in 15 years, an increase in administrative cost, and funding for the new CAC in Williamson County. The CACs requested that DCS include this as a budget line item, and we have fulfilled that request. I'm joined today by Deputy Commissioner and Chief of Staff Andy Verinsky, Assistant Commissioner of Finance Mohammed El Casey, Executive Director of Network Development Frank Mix, and Director of Legislative Affairs Jim Lehman. We will also be joined at the table by Executive Director over Federal Programs Tony Neese and Deputy General Counsel Semi Mayfair. We also have a number of our leadership and DCS team members here today to support our efforts, and I want to thank them for their dedication to serve children and families. As part of the discussion today, we will also be talking about a supplemental request for the recalculation of the residential custodial budget. Because this is also part of the current budget request, in a moment we will address